This is Steve Kalina, the President and CEO of the Minnesota Precision Manufacturing Association, MPMA. I know you all have a lot on your plates and are trying to balance information from many directions, so I really appreciate you joining us this morning. I also want to thank our presenting partners, Central Minnesota Manufacturing Association and Tri-State Manufacturing Association. Just a reminder that you can find this webinar PowerPoint and recording on MPMA's website under our Events tab. We know we won't return to business as usual anytime in the near future. However, business must move on. There are still many COVID-19 related matters to deal with, but as manufacturers, we know we'll find ways to move forward and thrive because that's just what we do. Whether you're staying fully busy with essential products or you have capacity being covered by PPP, it's important to keep your employees' morale up. It's important to keep making process improvements, and it's imperative to continue with skills development for your future workforce. That's why we're excited to talk today about two training resources. Jody Griesing, the director of the Minnesota Job Skills Partnership, MJSP, under DEED, will share with us their automation training incentive pilot program. I have personal experience with MJSP, and their grant programs have been a great resource for both my business and MPMA. And this program enables companies to take first steps into automation or to continue to build your automation culture without a major investment. But first, Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry's Pipeline Dual Training Grant Program encompasses what most workers and employers need, training for employees who are already working. My company used Pipeline for years, and it's a great resource that Dan Solomon from Department of Labor will give us more information on. So we'll kick it off. Go ahead, Dan.
Well, thank you so much, Steve. I really appreciate the opportunity to share and be with you all this morning. So very briefly, Minnesota, before I dig in, one of the things that I think is really important is that as we think about moving past COVID and the next steps, we're at a time where it may be even more important that training be in a place where you're getting the maximum out of your employees and getting them to the peak skills so that you really are getting the most investment and bang for your buck. And so hopefully this information will be helpful this morning. And Steve, just really, and all the partners really appreciate the opportunity to share. So very quickly, what is Minnesota Dual Training Pipeline? It's a source of support to employers for creating their own employment-based dual training programs. And so when we say employment-based, that means either existing workers or a way to recruit new workers. But folks are going to be doing dual training. And we operate in 4 industries, obviously for purposes of today, and you guys, advanced manufacturing, but also agriculture, healthcare, and IT. We recognize everybody has IT needs, so if that was something that you all needed, you could potentially leverage Pipeline for IT as well. And it wouldn't be a government program if Pipeline didn't actually exist as a giant acronym. So Pipeline stands for, believe it or not, Private Investment, Public Education, Labor, and Industry Experience. So there you have it, some good classic government acronyms. Steve, you can go to the next slide. And we can just get all the way through it. So employment-based training. So again, that's existing workers or new workers, but typically if they're an existing worker, maybe they're in a lower skilled job, but if they had some additional training support, they could move into a higher skilled job. And then the dual training is it's combining structured on-the-job training paired with some formal education that results in the completion of a degree, a certificate, and an industry-recognized credential. And hopefully, you really see a lot of win-wins through that. If you want to go to the next slide, Steve, we could just talk a little bit about the benefits. So obviously, the benefits to the employers, one, you really are the driver's seat for shaping your workforce. This could be a great way to either scale up to current workers or to be leveraged as a tool to recruit new people to say, hey, come work for me. You'll earn a paycheck right away, and you'll have some, you'll get some education, earn a degree or a certificate, and typically earn it without having any student debt, either through contributions from the company or resources from the state or a combination of the two. And so that can be a real big boost. And then the other big thing that we hear from employers is usually it helps with retention because employees see they're being cared about, they're being invested in, and that can be a really motivating factor to want to stay with the company. And for the workers, it's obvious. It's an earn and learn model, so they're getting paid They're doing their job. They're mastering these in-demand skills, and they're getting credentials that they're going to be able to take with them and add to their resume and grow in their career. And so if we go to the next slide, we do this work in sort of three big buckets. One, we have industry forums where throughout the year we invite folks from manufacturing to come in, tell us what are your challenges, what are your successes, what do you need help with, and we use that information to inform our work. We also do competency councils, which is a competency-based approach to training, which I'll get into more in a second. And then the last piece that we do is we do dual training consulting, which is really just a fancy way of saying we will meet with any manufacturer around the state interested in creating this sort of a model to be able to go forward and advance your workforce that way. So we'll go to the next one. These are the current list of all of the occupations that we have approved for pipeline now under advanced manufacturing. What's really important to note here is, so these are the ones that are eligible for state grant funding. They have a corresponding pyramid that is connected with them, and we'll show that in a second. But I want to be sure to add, this is not supposed to be just a list that doesn't ever change. We're always interested in adding additional occupations, and so you can always feel free to let us know if there's something on there that you don't see that you would like to see us add. In fact, a couple of the new ones we just added this year were in the plastics area. We added injection molding and extrusion molding. And so we'll go to the next slide. So it's a little hard to see, but it's important. Every one of these occupations has a competency pyramid that's associated with them. Because the whole idea here is that this is about setting up training that really to meet the needs of the job. So what do you need to be successful in this job? And then break it down to see how you're going to learn those things. And so the occupation-specific competencies in that blue box, that's going to be the stuff you're going to learn through the on-the-job training. The next two, industry sector and industry-wide, those tend to be the things you're going to learn through the formal education. And the bottom ones, workplace academic and personal effectiveness, tend to be things that either the employee's already brought to the job or they're going to pick up in both settings. And so that's sort of these sort of serve as a roadmap for how you think about training. And all of this is written based on what we hear from manufacturers. And so if we go to the next slide, we'll get into a little bit more about the grant opportunity. So there is a grant. We're right in the middle of the cycle now to apply for it. It opened on March 23rd. It will close on May 8th. And the companies are the ones who apply. They can apply for up to $150,000 per year to pay for up to $6,000 per employee to cover the cost of their tuition, their books, their fees, all of those sorts of things, as long as it is aligned to an occupation for pipeline and it results in the completion of a degree, a certificate, or an industry-recognized credential. And so it's a really good opportunity to be able to tap into. And you can apply as a company for one employee for $6,000 or for 25 and go for the full $150,000. It really spans the range and the gambit. You're in the driver's seat when you look to apply for these things. It's on a reimbursement model. So the way it works is the company pays the school for the employee's tuition, books, fees. They submit their receipts to the state of Minnesota, and then they get reimbursed. If you're a company that exceeds $25 million in revenue, there is a match requirement. It's a straight cash match. So instead of being reimbursed 100%, you'd be reimbursed 75%. If you're a company that is less than $25 million in revenue, there's no match, and so you're not required to contribute any kind of match. And one of the things that's cool about this program is it's really broad and who can be counted as an employee. So basically, they have to be trained in the eligible occupation. They don't have to have the title of the occupation, but their skills should line up with it. They can't have already completed the degree, so can't go back and pay for stuff they already did. And they have to be working in Minnesota. But for any of you who may be in a border town, they don't have to be a Minnesota resident. So they could be a Wisconsin resident, but if the work is happening in Minnesota, they could still qualify for this program and benefit. So that's just one of the cool things about this program. And so we'll go to the next slide, just to give you some sense of where this money has gone in the past. So this program started in 2015. To date, there have been 168 grants awarded across the state to 92 different employers. Over 1,300 dual trainees have benefited. Over 49 different education providers. So you do not have to just work with the Minnesota state system, although they're our most common ones. But you could, if you found another alternative training provider, you could, like Pulse and Plastics, for example, you could work with them. Last round, we gave away over $2.6 million. And of the 60 grants that were awarded in round 8, 43 of them were in greater Minnesota. So this is not just a metro program. And over half of them were in manufacturing. And so we're really excited to continue to partner with manufacturers with this opportunity. It's a grant that's run by our partners at the Office of Higher Ed. And so included is their contact information, the grant administrator, Jacqueline Moles-Sutton. So you have her contact information if you ever had any direct questions, but you can always reach out to me. And I believe my contact information is probably on the next slide, I think. And with that, I will turn it back over to Steve and hang around for questions at the end.
All right, thanks, Dan. So yeah, we'll move right ahead to Jody Griesing from MJSP.
Thank you for having me here today. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. As Steve indicated, I am with the Minnesota Job Skills Partnership. We actually have 5 different grant programs for training, but today I'm going to be talking about our Automation Training Incentive Program. So if you want to go ahead and go to the first slide. The purpose of this program is to provide grants of up to $25,000 to assist small businesses in the adoption of new automation technology, and it is intended to help them address skilled worker shortages, maintain continuity and competitiveness, and to increase their efficiency and productivity. To the next slide. To be eligible for this program, you need to be an existing business located in Minnesota that is in the manufacturing or skilled production industry, and you must have 100 or fewer employees. The training is for existing full-time jobs that pay at least 120% of federal poverty guidelines. Currently, that's around $30,900 a year. The business must have recently invested in new automation technology, which means within the past 6 months, or be planning to invest in new automation technology within the proposed project period. The automation must not result in the dislocation of workers. And to be eligible, you must score at least 30 points on our evaluation criteria. The next slide. So again, you must score at least 30 points, and that's out of a possible 90 points. And some of the things we're looking at that we're scoring on include the retention of jobs at risk. So for example, if this new automation technology is going to require a new skill set and your employees don't have those skills, they're at risk of losing their job. So if it will result in the retention of any jobs at risk, you can get 5 points for that. We're looking at the business location. So if you're located in an area of economic distress, that's 5 points. If you're located in greater Minnesota, that's 5 points. We're looking at the business size. Again, it's intended to help small businesses. So the smaller the business, the more points that they can receive, and that's up to 10 points. We're looking at the wage rates. So higher wages, the higher points. And then also if there will be any wage increases as a result of training, that would be an additional 5 points. If the business is investing some of their own funds into the training, that can be worth up to 10 points. We're looking at a return on our state investment that's based on the income taxes generated from the jobs that are being trained for, up to 10 points for that. And then up to 10 points for any certifications that the trainees will earn through the training. And then I indicated that this is the main criteria we're looking at, but there are other areas that we look at, and that complete list can be found in our program guide. Go to the next slide. So the training that's eligible through this program includes pretty much any training that's related to the implementation of the new automation technology or equipment. This training can be provided in-house by consultants, through the equipment vendor, through our educational institutions, or other training providers. So it's very flexible in terms of who's providing the training. Some examples of the types of training would be advanced technical skill training, such as mechatronics or robotics would be examples. Training on the industry-specific equipment, any process or quality training that's specific to the new equipment, safety training, maintenance training. You can do train the trainer, and also computer or technological skills such as programming or software training. And next slide. Our eligible uses of funds. So the funds can be used for any direct training costs that are associated with the training of your workers on this new automation technology. Some examples would be any assessment, testing, and certification fees, development of the curriculum, delivery of the training. It can include the trainee or trainer wages for the time they're in training. It can include training materials and supplies. It can include trainer travel, and it can also include training equipment that's prorated for the time the equipment is used for the training. Next slide. Talk about the program timelines. So this is a pilot program, and we started accepting applications of August last year, and we'll be accepting applications through June 30th this year. The awards are made on a first come, first served basis, and they are approved by the Commissioner of Deed. They are contingent on the availability of funds, and we do have plenty of funds available at this time. The training must begin within 6 months of the award, and the training must be completed by December 31st of this year. Next slide. Some of the things that we would consider successful outcomes of this program would be the continuity of operations during the implementation of your new automation technology or equipment, the retention of jobs, increased wages, certifications for your workers, increased productivity and efficiency, enhanced job satisfaction, and increased safety. Next slide. We have our program contacts here. So Danielle Crescent and Vicki Poloni are our grant coordinators that manage these grants. Danielle typically serves the area north of the Twin Cities. Vicki serves the area south of the Twin Cities, and they split the metro area. But any of the three of us are available to answer any questions you might have about this program or any of our other programs. Right now, it's best to contact us through email. We are all working from home at this time, so email would be the best way to contact us. And then the last slide. For additional information, you can go to our website at that address, and you'll find additional information on the ATIP program, as well as our other training programs. And then I just want to say, if for any reason the ATIP program doesn't work for you, whether your business has over 100 employees, or maybe you have training needs that aren't necessarily related to new automation technology, or if the timeline doesn't work for you, I would encourage you to check out our partnership program. We do fund a lot of training that is related to automation through that program. And so we do a lot of mechatronics, robotics training, a lot of maintenance technician type training, but it is open to a variety of different types of training. Those are larger grants. They do have to be done through our Minnesota State educational institutions. But again, I would encourage you to go to the website and check out our other programs, and you can find more information on ATIP. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jody. Again, if anyone has questions, you can feel free to add them in the chat log. We've got a few here. So one question was asked on just where to find the details on the pipeline occupations, and Dan actually already posted a link in the chat function. So if you have questions on that, you can go to that link. One question I've got for both of you, because this is something that's been weighing on my mind, is as most companies have been pursuing PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program funding through SBA, kind of the looming question is, if you have people that you would otherwise be laying off because of workload, and maybe you've got an essential status and you're making some essential products, but if those were personnel that you would have laid off due to workload, how do companies justify that that potential risk in bringing them in? And as we're talking about today, we're talking about training, which I think is a great time to pursue training when you do have maybe some capacity, and it's a great morale boost. It's a great focus on the future. However, it's maybe implement or bringing a little risk to the situation, and that maybe those people could otherwise be at home. Do either of you guys have comments on kind of that balance of risk versus investment and training in the in the coming months? I know it's a loaded question.
No, I mean, I think, I mean, obviously, you want to, safety's got to come above all, right? So you want to continue that if you're going to bring people in and do on the job training, that it be done in a setting, that's maintaining all the things we talked about with COVID, right? So social distancing and all of those sorts of things. But if there are ways to do that, and still, I think maybe a little bit as we get through the governor's executive order to get past that should open the door up to some additional things and opportunities as well. One of the other things that we're encouraging folks to think about is, are there ways to do even some on-the-job training through demonstration kind of modes, where maybe you have employees and they are at home, but you have somebody who's doing showing how to work on a machine and recording it, and so your employees are watching a new skill, where they're not, maybe they don't necessarily have to be in person, but they can see and learn through almost a virtual job check. It's one idea we're exploring or thinking about. How can we do this in alternative ways? That's just some initial thoughts.
Breaking up, just look at online and distance learning. I know our Minnesota educational institutions do capability for a lot of their different training programs. So I think that might actually be, right now might be a great time when you have people at home, time to provide training, and you could do a lot of that through distance learning. So that's all the way there.
How about, Ken, thanks for answering that. Can companies use both pipeline and MJSP at the same time for, I mean, I'm assuming you can't double dip on the dollars, but if you've got more than that amount of expense, can you use both funds simultaneously?
Yes, I don't.
Go ahead.
I guess from our perspective is, again, as long as you're not double dipping and for both programs for the same training, absolutely there would be no issue with utilizing both of those programs. But you could also, for classroom portions of the training, could possibly be done through the MJSP program, and then your on-the-job training through the pipeline program might be one way that could work.
Yeah, another thing that we haven't talked about, Steve, but what that absolutely fits in the mix here too is any of the registered apprenticeship kind of things that can be done at the same time as well.
Sure.
So that's something to consider too.
Okay. A question for Jody: what is there a dollar amount required for the investment on the technology side?
No, there is not a dollar amount required on that.
And does it need to be capital equipment, or could it be investment in software or other related?
It can be software, and that's why we kind of go back and forth between technology or equipment. It could definitely be software that would automate your process, okay, or help in the automation of your process.
So, question for Dan. A lot of companies within MPMA, especially, and a lot of the companies that I think are using both pipeline and MJSP are small businesses. Specifically for pipeline, when it's intended to be dual training, how do small companies figure that out? We've got a lot of member companies that are 30 employees and they don't have registered apprenticeship programs. They don't have designated mentors. how do they figure out dual training, for a small business?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, one of the things that I always start with is when I talk to folks, quite often, you're probably doing a lot of on-the-job training at your place of business already. I think what Pipeline can offer is a way to sort of frame it and give you some context to really critically think through what exactly do we want to make sure our people are learning, and then use it as a way to hold yourself accountable to make sure that whether it's through job shadowing or mentorship or assignment-based evaluation or a discussion approach. On-the-job training can look and feel a lot of different ways. It doesn't have to exclusively be one way or another. But it's really where I think Pipeline helps a company up its game is on the front end, you're laying out exactly sort of what you want to hold yourselves accountable to. And then you make sure that if these are the skills that we really value in this position, we're going to make sure that we're consistent in training in it. Instead of what a lot of times I see is sort of the principle of where, like, did Jeff learn that? I think he did, but did Jim learn that? I can't really remember if he did. Yeah, it sort of ups your game to make sure that you're seeing some of that consistency across the board. And we do have small manufacturers who use this. I think it's really important to know that, yes, you could be, a larger manufacturer like UMC is one of your members. But on the flip side, we've got a Jaeger machine that has, 25, I think 30 employees, and they leverage it for a couple of people every year. So you can be creative that way.
All right. I've got one more question for Jody, and I think I kind of already asked you this, and this is maybe more for me than maybe the attendees, but what do we need to do to make sure that the automation grant keeps going forward? I know you and I have talked about it a bit, and I think it's a great opportunity for companies, especially small companies that haven't dove in to automation head first, but want to take some small steps and can start building the culture. The June 30th deadline is coming up quick. I would love to see that continue. I think that's a great opportunity. What can we do to help make sure that keeps going?
Great, thanks for that question. First of all, I think we want to show that there is obviously a demand for this program, that there's a need for it. So we would like to utilize the funds that we have. So we do encourage any businesses that think this might be a good fit for them to contact us and consider applying for this grant. And the other part of it would be those who do receive grants. We really need to hear from you how it benefited your company, how it benefited your employees. We need to demonstrate that it's effective, obviously, in order to pursue funding on an ongoing basis. This was funded through our board as a special project, which they have authority to do. So the legislature has not been involved with this program. So again, we would want to be able to show that it really had an impact for these small businesses, that it did make a difference in whether or not they were able to make that investment in the automation. And then by putting some effort into those reports back to us to let us know all of those impacts that it had would help us bring something to the legislature to get permanent funding for the program.
And if I'm a manufacturer who wants to get more automation, I don't have to use your training just for an automation technician or automation engineer. I could I not take a machinist, a welder, a process or injection molding processing technician, any of those people who I want to get more engaged in automation and more engaged in automating their work cell and get them automation training?
Yes, through the automation training incentive program, it has to be directly tied to the new equipment or technology that you're investing in. But yes, it can be anyone who would be working on that equipment, whether it's doing maintenance or programming or running, operating the machine. Anyone could be trained on that. Now, if you're looking more in general and doing automation training that's not necessarily related to a new piece of automation technology or equipment, then you should look at our partnership program.
Sure. Okay, I've got probably one more question here from one of the attendees, and then we'll wrap things up. One of the questions was, if, oh, actually, Dan, it looks like you already answered it, huh? So I guess if anyone has questions, well, the question was if a competency listed in one industry, can it be used for a different industry that doesn't have that competency listed? So Dan, I'll just read off Dan's answer in case anyone else has the question. The shorter answer is it is possible, but at the end of the day, it will always depend on what the occupation is and what it needs to succeed. Additionally, for pipeline, it has to be within one of our 4 industries. So I think that uses up all of our time here. Appreciate all the great questions. I appreciate all of you attending. I want to thank Dan Solomon and Jody Griesing. Great presentations. Encourage you all to look into these programs. Again, I have personal experience with my business and with MPMA. These are great programs, a great way to engage employees right now and keep developing our future talent. So thank you all for joining. I wish you all the best, and take care of yourselves, your family, and your businesses, and look forward to seeing you all soon.
Great. Thank you,
for
Steve.
having us.